Hey folks, today we're going to talk about the Bloodbath hoax. Most of you have probably heard it, but for those who haven't, Democrat propaganda is that President Trump was calling for violence by using the word bloodbath at one of his rallies. Everyone from paid propagandists to the leftist media, and even Kamala Harris and Joe Biden themselves have been using a very short clip from a Trump rally out of context to propagate this hoax. Let's start off by taking a look at that clip.
Now, if I don't get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath for the whole. That's going to be the least of it. It's going to be a bloodbath for the country. That'll be the least of it.
So what was Trump talking about? Was he calling for violence as they claim? Why would he use the word bloodbath? When you know the context, the answer to those questions is very straightforward. Trump was speaking of the auto industry and the effects on our economy of Chinese car companies building factories in Mexico and dumping cheap cars on the U.S. market. In fact, the word bloodbath was a direct quote from Xi, the CEO of Chinese car maker Xi. As reported in a CNBC article dated February 19, 2024, in an employee memo he wrote, "This year also marks the beginning of a fierce competition that may end in a bloodbath, or as I prefer to call it, the brutal knockout round among Chinese automakers." CNBC themselves were complicit in getting this hoax off the ground. Even though they had previously reported on He's memo and the use of the word bloodbath, when writing about the Trump rally, they used the inflammatory headline of "Trump says there will be a bloodbath if he doesn't get elected in November," with no mention of the context that he was speaking of the auto industry and economy. Let's go ahead and look at the full clip from that rally so you can see Trump's comments in context.
China now is building a couple of massive plants where they're going to build the cars in Mexico and they think that they're going to sell those cars into the United States with no tax at the border. Let me tell you something to China. If you're listening, President Xi, and you and I are friends, but he understands the way I deal, those big monster car manufacturing plants that you're building in Mexico right now, and you think you're going to get that, you're going to not hire Americans, and you're going to sell the cars to us. No, we're going to put a 100% tariff on every single car that comes across the line, and you're not going to be able to sell those cars. If I get elected, now, if I don't get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath for the whole. That's going to be the least of it. It's going to be a bloodbath for the country. That'll be the least of it. But they're not going to sell those cars. They're building massive factories. A friend of mine, all he does is build car manufacturing plants. He's the biggest.
So now that you have the full context, it's plain to see there was no threat of or expectation of violence. It was simply about the auto industry and economy. Sadly, the Democratic Party has built a huge propaganda machine. Paid social media influencers supported by the leftist media spread these lies to keep people voting for them out of fear. I will be doing regular fact checks to debunk the propaganda. Next up will be the Suckers and Losers hoax. Follow us on X as @RWT News or on Facebook as Red, White, and True News to get the latest stories and fact checks. Thank you.